My name is Luna, and at 32, I believed I had finally outrun the shadow of my family's financial chaos. After a decade of disciplined independence, one brief moment of lowered guard cost me everything. The next morning, I watched $78,000 vanish from my savings account. When I confronted him, my father only shrugged. We needed it more than you. That single sentence erased whatever illusion of family I had still allowed myself to keep. Before I continue, I want you to hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to construct a fortress around yourself to stay safe from the very people who were supposed to be your shelter. My car, a forgettable gray sedan parked 2 blocks from the house, felt less like transportation and more like a command post. I didn't cry, I didn't yell. My father's words had bypassed every soft emotional reflex and wired straight into the coldest, most analytical part of my mind. For 14 years, I had been the quiet backer of their version of a family, pouring in love and emergency funds in exchange for the fantasy of eventual reciprocity. Now I understood the truth. It had never been an investment, it had been a subscription model, and I had been paying monthly. My empathy had been a line of credit they finally maxed out. This wasn't betrayal. It was a default on a long-standing emotional loan, and I am exceptionally skilled at collecting debts. My hands were perfectly steady as I opened my laptop. The blue glow of the screen lit my face in the dark interior of the car. My fingers moved quickly, each action deliberate and exact. First, the bank. I went straight to the high-value fraud reporting portal. I completed the form with clinical precision. Unauthorized transfers. Total amount $78,000. In the field marked relationship to account holder, I paused for only a heartbeat before typing source of exploitation. Next, I opened a new document, a spreadsheet. I had been building it in my head for years, a ledger of every loan never returned, every emergency that turned into leisure. $20 for gas, $350 for a shut-off notice, $5,000 for medical bills that funded a weekend in Atlantic City. I entered each item one by one, no commentary, no emotion, just data. This wasn't about feelings. It was about establishing pattern and precedent. My phone buzzed. My mother, honey, where did you go? We were worried. I ignored it. Another buzz, my father calling. I let it ring until voicemail answered for me. They weren't stunned by what they'd done. They were stunned that I had stopped pretending not to see it. The final task of the night was an email to Sarah Vance, a college friend who had become one of the city's most formidable financial crimes attorneys. Subject line, asset recovery. The body was even more direct. Sarah, my parents have illegally transferred $78,000 from my savings account. I have transaction documentation and a demonstrated history of financial manipulation. I am formally retaining you to recover my assets and pursue all available legal remedies. This is not a family disagreement. This is theft. Please advise your retainer fee. Luna, I pressed send at 12:03 a.m., leaning back against the headrest. I finally allowed myself one slow breath. There was no hysteria, only clarity. This wasn't a breakdown, it was a balance sheet. Inside the car, my laptop cast a different kind of sunrise, the kind made of case numbers, wire fraud statutes, and measured patient retribution. To understand my response, you have to understand the training ground. Growing up with my parents, Robert and Diana, was an advanced course in financial instability. My father never encountered a gamble he didn't chase. He would vanish for days, returning either giddy with temporary winnings or, more often, frantic and scavenging for anything that could be pawned. My mother enabled him with religious devotion. Your father just needs one good win, she'd say while searching my room for loose change. My earliest memory of their exploitation happened when I was 6. I had saved birthday money in a pink ceramic piggy bank. For months, I fed it coins. The weight of it felt like achievement. One night, I heard it shatter. I walked into the kitchen to find my father standing over the broken pieces, coins clenched in his fist. Just borrowing this, princess, he said without meeting my eyes. I'll double it by morning, promise. The money never came back. Borrowing from the Luna Bank became a running joke, code for taking the $5 meant to last me the week. By 16, I hid cash inside hollowed books. By 17, I opened a secret bank account. By 18, I left with $342 and a vow never to rely on anyone again. The years that followed were a montage of exhaustion and resolve. Waitressing at dawn, retail until night. Community college classes squeezed between shifts. I shared a studio apartment with 4 other women. Still, I maintained a 3.88 GPA. That earned me a marketing internship. My supervisor, Vivian, recognized my drive and became my mentor. Over the next decade, I climbed steadily: junior copywriter, content strategist, department lead. While coworkers upgraded cars and moved into larger apartments, I stayed put. Same sedan, same modest rental, every extra dollar invested. Last year, I was promoted to senior marketing director. My salary doubled. For the first time in my life, I could inhale without calculating the cost of oxygen. The $78,000 in my savings account wasn't just money, it was autonomy. It was the down payment on a life I had constructed inch by disciplined inch. Over the years, my relationship with my parents remained a tightly managed liability. They contacted me only when funds ran low. After losing $5,003 years ago to medical bills that became a gambling spree, I set a hard boundary. No more money. Their reaction was predictable. I became the cold, ungrateful daughter. When the invitation to a family reunion arrived, I nearly discarded it, but my therapist, Dr. Winters, encouraged me to attend with reinforced boundaries. "Observe," she said, "don't engage." How desperately I wanted to believe we could be ordinary, how thoroughly that hope betrayed me. I arrived Friday evening and immediately took inventory. The dilapidated bungalow of my childhood now wore new siding and manicured landscaping. "Your father's been doing handyman jobs," my mother explained vaguely. I knew his workmanship. Nothing he built endured. This was contractor quality. Inside, the upgrades continued: hardwood floors, high-end appliances, a 70-inch television mounted on the wall. For people who routinely claimed they couldn't cover utilities, they were living remarkably well. "Brace yourself," my Aunt Lisa whispered during our hug. She had always been the lone adult who saw the truth. Relatives filled the house. In the kitchen, my mother presided over a catered spread she insisted she'd prepared. "There she is," my father announced, "the career superstar." He draped an arm over my shoulders and paraded me around, boasting about my success. My mother peppered me with detailed questions about my job and my finances with unusual intensity. "They're overdoing it," my younger brother Jacob muttered. He had escaped at 18 too. "Mom asked if you're still with that investment broker, very curious about your accounts." "Patrick and I broke up 6 months ago," I said. I told her that. Jacob raised an eyebrow. "She also mentioned your luxury condo." "I rent a standard apartment." The unease settled deeper. They were collecting data. Despite every warning sign, part of me wanted to believe this time might be different. When my father asked me to sit beside him at dinner, childish validation bloomed. When he listened intently to my description of a marketing campaign, I glimpsed the father I'd once imagined. After dinner, my mother opened photo albums. "Remember when Luna saved for 6 months to buy that bicycle?" she said warmly. She omitted how it disappeared 2 weeks later into a pawn shop. "Always good with money," my father added. "Unlike her old man, so how's that portfolio doing? Patrick had you in solid stocks, right?" Flattered by the attention, I answered too freely. "My new investments have performed strongly," I said. "My advisor shifted assets into tech startups that nearly tripled." My father whistled. "Smart girl. Must be building quite the nest egg." "She works hard for every dollar," Aunt Lisa cut in sharply. The topic drifted, but finances kept surfacing like buoys in deep water. By midnight drained, I excused myself. I placed my purse in the bedside drawer out of habit. Years of guarding my belongings had conditioned me well. As I drifted to sleep, a fragile hope lingered. It did not survive the morning. At 7:30 a.m., transaction alerts jolted me awake. Half conscious, I opened my banking app. Balance $8,372. Yesterday, $78,837. I assumed a glitch. I refreshed. The number remained. My pulse pounded as I checked the transaction history. Between 2 and 4 a.m., a series of transfers had drained the account, authorized from an unrecognized device. I called the bank's fraud department. "Yes, Miss Carter," the representative said. "We show multiple large transfers last night. I did not authorize them," I said firmly. "Our records indicate the transfers were completed using your correct password and the authentication app on your registered device. The accessing IP address." She paused. "It appears to be your current location." My blood ran cold. Where did the money go? Several different accounts. The largest was to a Robert Carter. "Is that name familiar?" My father. My own father had drained my savings while I slept under his roof. I ended the call and searched my purse. My wallet was there, but the small notebook in a secondary compartment was subtly out of place. Someone had been through my bag, flashes from the night before. My mother insisting on taking my jacket, my purse left briefly in the living room, the unusually deep sleep after the single glass of wine she'd pressed on me. They had planned this. The reunion, the warmth, the questions, it was all a setup. The physical symptoms hit, my hands trembled, nausea drove me to the bathroom. $78,000, my security gone, a text from my cousin appeared. Thanks for the amazing gift. Uncle Rob said you insisted on helping with my education. Asterisk, then another asterisk, generous of you to contribute to the family vacation rental. Rob says you're covering half a finally for my brother. Asterisk Luna, call me as soon as possible. Something is wrong. Mom and Dad are suddenly flushed with cash. I called Jacob, my voice tight with a cold rage. I knew it, he said. They've been planning this for months. Dad told me they were expecting a windfall. Downstairs, I heard laughter. My parents were having breakfast celebrating their theft. They don't see it as yours, Jacob said softly. In their minds, they deserve it more. They'll never understand what they did was wrong. I ended the call. This wasn't a family dispute. This was a crime. The last lingering hope of reconciliation died. They were not family. They were thieves who shared my DNA, and I would treat them accordingly. My first instinct was to storm downstairs, but impulsive reactions gave them power. I needed to be strategic. I had already emailed my lawyer, Sarah Vance. Her reply was waiting. Do not confront them. Document everything. I'll meet you at my office at noon. Next, I called Aunt Lisa. I was afraid of this, she said, her voice heavy. Your mother has been dropping hints about a new car for weeks. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Do not go downstairs alone. While waiting, I methodically gathered evidence, screenshots of the transfers, photos of my searched bag. A video walkthrough of the house documenting their new expensive purchases. Then I found it. A notification showed my banking authentication app had been accessed at 2:15 in the morning. They must have used my fingerprint while I slept. The violation made me physically ill. When Lisa arrived, I slipped out to her car. She hugged me as I finally allowed a single cold tear to fall. This is theft, Luna, plain and simple, she said. We drove to Sarah's office. For the next 3 hours, we built a case. Sarah contacted the bank's fraud department, establishing a formal investigation. Lisa provided written testimony about my parents' spending patterns. This will get ugly, Sarah warned. They will claim it was a gift. They will turn family against you. Are you prepared for that? They already stole my money, I replied. What else can they take? Your peace of mind, your energy for months, maybe years. Neither was earning that money, I said firmly. I want it back, all of it. We developed a multi-pronged approach. First, the bank would freeze any remaining funds. Second, we would file a police report. Third, we would confront my parents with legal representation, giving them one chance to return the money before criminal charges were filed. Before leaving, I called Dr. Winters and scheduled an emergency session. You need emotional support as much as legal support, she reminded me. This is a profound betrayal. That evening, our legal strategy was in place. I spent the night at Lisa's hotel receiving texts from Jacob. They're buying everyone gifts with your money, he reported. It's disgusting. The next morning, Sarah, Lisa, and I met to review our approach. Michael, an associate from Sarah's firm, had arranged for a sheriff's deputy to accompany us, waiting outside unless needed. I carried a bag with documented proof of every previous financial manipulation. I was ready. I had been ready for this my entire life. We arrived at my parents' house at exactly 10 in the morning. The sheriff's deputy parked discreetly down the street. My hand trembled slightly as I rang the doorbell. My father answered surprise, flickering across his face before settling into a practiced smile. Luna, we wondered where you disappeared to. And Lisa, who's your friend? This is Sarah, I said flatly. My attorney. His smile faltered. Attorney, what's this about Diana? Come see who's here. My mother appeared, her eyes darting nervously between us and the portfolio under Sarah's arm. May we come in? Lisa asked. We stepped into the living room, the air crackling with tension. Robert, Diana, I began formally. You know why I am here. You accessed my financial accounts without permission and transferred $78,000. My father scoffed, settling into his new leather recliner. It's just money, Luna. You have plenty more where that came from. That was my house down payment, I replied, my voice steady. Money I saved for 14 years. We needed it more, he said with a dismissive wave. The family needed it. Honey, we were going to discuss it with you, my mother added, her eyes wide with practiced innocence. We just knew you'd say no if we asked first, because you never repay what you borrow, I countered. That is theft. We gave you life, my father snapped. Everything you have comes from us. That makes it family money. Sarah stepped forward. Mr. and Mrs. Carter, I represent Luna. You have committed identity theft, bank fraud, and grand larceny. My mother's eyes filled with tears. How could you bring a lawyer against your own parents? You mean after you access my accounts while I slept in your home as a guest? I interrupted. I have documented everything. The bank has already frozen the remaining funds. My father's face flushed. You can't prove anything. Maybe you gave us your passwords and now you're having regrets. Actually, Sarah interjected. The transfers occurred between 2:00 and 4:00 in the morning. The authentication was completed using her fingerprint while she was unconscious. That elevates this to a more serious category of crime. My mother's tears vanished. You have always been dramatic, Luna. You have a choice, I said. Return my money in full by tomorrow or I press charges. My father laughed a harsh, humorless sound. Go ahead, see how that plays with the family. At that precise moment, a loud knock shook the front door. Michael entered with the deputy. Robert and Diana Carter, the deputy asked. I have here an emergency order freezing your assets in connection with a fraud investigation. My father jumped to his feet. This is ridiculous. Actually, sir, I have a warrant. The deputy handed him the document. My mother began to cry again, this time with genuine fear. Luna, how could you do this to us? We're your parents. Parents don't steal from their children, I replied. They protect them. The front door opened again. My Aunt Ruth and Uncle Thomas entered, arriving for the barbecue my parents had planned. What is going on here? Ruth asked. Your brother stole $78,000 from Luna. Lisa explained bluntly. Uncle Thomas turned to my father, disbelief on his face. Rob, tell me this isn't true. My father's silence was answer enough. As more family arrived, the scene devolved into chaos. My cousin Ellie tearfully offered to return the laptop purchased with my stolen money. Jacob arrived and stood firmly by my side. This was not about revenge, it was about justice. It was about finally breaking the cycle. This is not over, my father threatened as we prepared to leave. Family doesn't do this to family. You're right, I agreed, meeting his gaze. Family does not do this to family. Remember that. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal proceedings. The bank had frozen the accounts, but recovering the money was complicated. My parents were charged with identity theft and financial fraud. They hired a defense attorney, claiming the money was a gift and I was having regrets. The family fractured. How could you do this over money? One cousin demanded. This isn't about money, I replied. It's about trust and boundaries. They violated both. Aunt Lisa was my rock. Jacob struggled but supported my decision. Were the good moments real? He asked me once, or just more manipulation. Both can be true, I told him. We can remember the good without excusing the bad. The mental toll was immense. I struggled with trust issues and insomnia. You are experiencing trauma, Dr. Winters explained. Being victimized by parents violates our most fundamental trust. My mother took to social media, painting herself as the victim of an ungrateful daughter. I deactivated my accounts, cutting myself off. 6 weeks in, I wavered. The stress was affecting my health. The legal bills mounted. Maybe I should just let it go, I told Lisa. You could, she said, but this cycle will never end unless you end it. They've never faced consequences. She was right. The next day, I reaffirmed my commitment. Small victories accumulated. The bank restored $34,000. Several relatives returned gifts. Most importantly, I began building a new support system of chosen family. My friends rallied around me. My colleague Zoe invited me to her family Thanksgiving, where I experienced holiday warmth without underlying tension for the first time. By December, 7 months after the theft, I had recovered nearly $50,000. The trial date was set for February. Jacob, having started therapy himself, came to a new clarity. They will never change, he told me, but we can. We can build something better. For the first time, I felt genuine hope. Not the naive hope that led me to the reunion, but something stronger built on self-respect and boundaries. 1 year after the theft, I stood in the courtroom. My parents had accepted a plea agreement.